Welcome in. We have made it. Week 13, almost in the books after tonight. We have Jaguars and Bengals. Very curious to see how this goes. And just to see who's going to be fantasy relevant. Higgins is supposed to be playing, so I'm very curious about this. As always, Mike, how's it going, Mike?
Yeah, it's good. It was a tough week. Good games, wasn't an amazing week, but a lot of bad weather, which I think affected a lot of play, and just some down performances. So hopefully, we're getting close. One more week for most people, and then the playoffs start up. So hopefully you got your spot locked up. But if you don't, we can maybe help you with some players for this week, but also, looking forward to the playoffs too. We'll give you some options.
For sure. Good thing for week 14. Only the Cardinals and the Commanders are on bye. So not really anybody super fantasy relevant there. Surprisingly. I guess Trey McBride is probably the most fantasy relevant player out of everybody involved on those two teams.
Yep. I mean, maybe like Howell, and maybe some people are still starting Howell and Kyler Murray, and
Brian Robinson has been good, but he's hurt. So he's probably going to miss this week anyway.
Yep.
That's a plus. Thankfully, we have some options for you. There were some decent injuries that could affect some people. So we'll start like we always do with quarterbacks. No surprise. Still going to be Gardner Minshew for me. 10.5% rostered. He has another good matchup this week. He faces the Bengals and the Steelers the next 2 weeks. Like, not super scared of either of them. Very curious to see how tonight goes for that reason. I expect Minshew to be able to do whatever he wants, really. And the running game kind of stopped short yesterday, which was surprising, but he put up 18 fantasy points, 18.68 fantasy points this week, and had a fumble, but he threw 2 passing touchdowns. That helps. And then the week before versus the Bucks, he put up 14.64 with no touchdowns, but had a rushing TD. So didn't throw a touchdown, but he ran one in, so that helps. But outside of that, there's a couple other names, so I'll let Mike get into them because I'm not quite sold on some of them.
Yeah, no, it's for this week coming up, there's not a whole lot of options, I'd say. Minshew's not a bad one. I am a little worried, like, trusting him. Like, I think he had not a great game heading into overtime, and overtime really pushed him over in that game. So it'd be tough for me to trust him, like, as a playoff quarterback. So just some guys I put out there. I mean, Josh Dobbs fell below 50% bye week. Rumors of maybe benching. He could be benched. I don't know. I still think they give him another shot. Hopefully they do give him another shot. And, before that last week's game where he was just looked like a backup, journeyman quarterback, he was good. He was a top 10 quarterback for fantasy, and I hope he can get back to that. Gets Justin Jefferson coming back. That can only help him, I would say. And then for the fantasy playoffs, they get the Bengals and the Lions the first 2 weeks, which are 2 really nice matchups theoretically for quarterbacks, both in the top 12. I think Lions are like in the top 5. So if he's back to looking like Josh Dobbs and, you're kind of bouncing back and forth streaming quarterbacks, Dobbs in the playoffs weeks 15 and 16 really like those matchups. So
yeah, and honestly, he struggled that one game, and it wasn't even his fault. He hit wide receivers in the hands, and it was just a tip drill. They were going through them and just popping into other people's hands, unfortunately, where they were just getting tipped, and that's just an unfortunate break for him.
Yeah, and I know it's easy to throw the talent on him because he is, a backup journeyman. It's easy to just, like, one bad game, all right, we forget about him. But I feel like we did that earlier in the year, and then he really bounced back. So I hope the Vikings give him another shot.
Well, especially with JJ potentially back. That'll be a big boost to see have another pass catching option that isn't hurt. It seems like a rookie in his first year trying to be a wide receiver 1.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Another guy that I hate for this week, but I really like for the playoffs is Matthew Stafford. Back-to-back 20-point games, 7 touchdowns over the last 2 games. Nothing's really changed from, like, how he was playing in the beginning of the year. It's just that he's throwing touchdowns. he was basically passing the same amount. Yards are very similar, but he's positive touchdown regression. So I really like Stafford. Again, they play the Ravens this week. So if you need someone for this week, not a good option. But then in the fantasy playoffs, you get Commanders, Saints, and Giants, which is pretty nice, especially that Commanders matchup. Again, they're giving
Can't stop anybody, and they got rid of their
man.
only pass defense or run defense. Like they got their best
Mhm.
players just shipped off. So
Yeah, I think they've given up like 100 and something points over the last 3 games. Like they're so bad. So Stafford, especially if again you're streaming quarterbacks, bouncing between a couple, really like his playoff schedule. And then Geno, I threw on here. I mean, he was right around just above 50%. Had a really good matchup or a really good game against the Cowboys, which no one started him, unfortunately, because it was against the Cowboys. He has another tough matchup in the 49ers week 14. But then Eagles, Titans, first 2 weeks of the playoffs. Those are 2 really good matchups as well. Eagles are one of the worst against quarterbacks this year. So just no one really great for week 14 out of streamers, though. It's a lot of tough matchups for these guys.
yeah, and I mean, like I said, I think Jalen really caught everybody off guard. I'm kind of struggling to trust it, but we'll see. It was a tough matchup, but he does get a little easier. Well, it's very interesting concept to think that he could be a potential player for you in the playoffs specifically, but who knows? We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll get off of quarterback, move into running backs. One of the big injuries happened here. Potentially, we'll see how serious it is, but Ramondre Stevenson getting hurt, suffered an ankle injury. With that in mind, Ezekiel Elliott, 34% rostered. He was the only active running back on the roster last week outside of Stevenson. So I'm curious to see how JaMychal Hasty, who I believe was on the practice squad and will likely come in and do some of the third down work. But with him out, he saw 69% of the snaps. And in week 12 versus Giants, 7.2 fantasy points. And then this past week versus Chargers, 13.2. Granted, he actually had some passing work this week with 4 receptions for 40 yards. So, and good news, he gets the Steelers this week, who are really just lost, it seems like. So, and then the guy we keep bringing up, Keaton Mitchell, he's more of a lottery ticket kind of a play. He's been really explosive. Could have been dropped due to the bye week, but he really dominated snaps that last game he played. And really looks like the most explosive back, whether that's because he has fresh legs or is coming off injury and hasn't really played a whole lot. Who knows? But just a refresher. Week 10 versus the Browns, 13.6 fantasy points. Week 11 versus the Bengals, 5.1. And then week 12 versus Chargers, 10.9 fantasy points. So could be something, but definitely wait and see for sure. But I kind of left some of the door open. I want to see who you decide to really roll with here.
Yeah, I listed a lot. Just real quick on Zeke. They play Thursday night as well, so it's almost if you need a start in week 14, Zeke's one of the top options here, maybe the top option if you need something at running back. So definitely, Ramondre's not going to be playing in. At least that's the sound of it. I would say another injury. Although we did get an update earlier today that Derrick Henry got banged up. They said he wasn't in the concussion protocol, so I don't know if it's something else wrong or if they just held him out for just precautionary reasons. But if he's not even in the protocol, so I don't know what's going on with Henry. But Tajay Spears, we've been mentioning him like every week. He should be rostered as just a high-end handcuff at worst. He had a decent game. I don't know how good he's actually going to be with a full workload, but the potential is definitely there. And he could actually he tends to do a lot better in games that they're trailing. And he's maybe even flex worthy in deeper leagues in games they're trailing. And they play the Dolphins, Texans, Seahawks, Texans. That's what they close out with. So that's 4 teams that they could easily be trailing in those games, especially like the Dolphins and Texans. So pick them up, especially this week with potentially Henry out. Kenneth Gainwell is another one. DeAndre Swift got hit pretty hard. Looked like he was hurt, at least, maybe injured. Don't know. The issue is, I think the game was like basically over. There was only like a few more plays when it happened, so we don't really know. Like, could he have come back? Did he not? But Kenneth Gainwell, for that reason, might be a decent ad. And Gainwell actually was playing even before the injury. He was playing a lot because they were trailing. I don't think the Eagles are going to be trailing that often, although they get the Cowboys this week. So you never know. Like, if Gainwell's the main guy, he's definitely worth a start. But even if you think it's going to be kind of a shootout game, Gainwell could get 5-6 catches like he had in this game. So yeah, those are the two big. And Antonio Gibson's the other injury one, but they're on a bye this week, as you know. So if you need it for this week, he's not the option. But he's been good with Brian Robinson there the last several weeks. He's averaging almost 12 points in PPR since week 9.
The thing that I'm more worried about for Gibson is just Curtis Samuel.
Yeah.
That's who really hurts Gibson, let's be honest, because that's kind of Gibson's role, it seems like. But yeah, with Brian Robinson, this is definitely something to keep an eye on, and more likely we'll be touching this again next week when it comes around, since he'll be coming back, and we might have some more information about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Gibson, I think he's had like 5 targets or 5 catches 3 weeks in a row, 3, 4 the last couple of weeks. So yeah, he's been pretty good without Brian Robinson. So and then Chris Rodriguez Jr., just throw on there, like he would be the guy I think that would take over the in between the tackles type of running if Brian Robinson is going to miss some time. A couple more here. Roshan was dropped even more, even though he had his almost a 75% snap share last time we saw him. He was on a bye last week, so he was dropped because of that. Not sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that really is just due to the fact that nobody's sure how they're going to split that.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't know if the Bears trail, it seems like Johnson's their go-to and who they use. Mm-hmm. If they're not trailing, it's Herbert. So I think that's really what's having people move that needle back and forth so much, is they're not 100% sure on who is going to be the one you want and what week is going to be the best time to play them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Not 100% sure why. I mean, what's weird is that the last game they played, where he played 74% of the snaps, it was a 12-10 game. So, it wasn't like they were playing catch up or anything either. It was just, I don't know if Khalil Herbert was hurt. Deontay Foreman was inactive. He could be back. That could muddy the waters. The one thing I'll say about Roshan and Keaton Mitchell, they're probably the only two on this list that we're saying that could kind of like take over the starting job and potentially be like, I don't want to say league winners, but just really good pieces for your team without an injury, right? Tajay Spears, Gainwell, Gibson, these guys all kind of need injuries. Zeke, which they got, we just don't know for how long yet. But to me, like Roshan and Keaton Mitchell can kind of just like take over the backfield, in my opinion, over these last 4 weeks. And I think we see it every year. If you go and look at the scoring from weeks like 13 to 17, there's just random guys in the list of like, wow, this guy had a good 4 weeks that won people championships. So
Kyron Williams.
Yeah, Kyron Williams, Cam Akers,
Sonny Michel,
Jerick McKinnon. Yeah, like all these guys just it happened. So could that be Roshan? Could that be Keaton Mitchell? It's possible. And then maybe even Ty Chandler. This is definitely last on the list, but they had a bye. Does he start to see a little bit more work? I think he's looked good at times, but he might just be kind of a change of pace to Madison the rest of the year.
Yeah, and maybe not super surprised, but Elijah Mitchell is another name I'm going to throw out there. Guys, at this point, you have to have your handcuff. If you're planning to go into playoffs, we're seeing Henry potentially out. They say he's not, but we'll see. Brian Robinson potentially out. All these guys who are seeing a decent amount of work, they're getting hit. And being a running back, you're running straight into it more often than not. A bunch of guys that are significantly bigger than you. So you have to, at this point, have your handcuff.
Yeah, Zamir White's another one of those. just a handcuff that's available everywhere. And even if you don't have Jacobs, like maybe you can just throw him on your bench. And Jacobs is one of those guys. He gets 20 plus touches, just open to getting hit. So
yeah, I have Etienne in a couple of leagues, and I was
Yeah.
able to pick up Dearness Johnson for nothing.
it's a good
So
one.
Yeah, and
that's another one to
good
keep on your radar. Yeah.
because we talked about him in the preseasons, and I thought for sure he'd be the
Mhm.
backup, and it took him all season, and he finally looks like he's the number 2 there. If Etienne goes down,
Yeah, and they could even just like lighten his load a little bit, Etienne's load. Like just he's already a little banged up. Yeah, they know they're going to be making the playoffs more than likely, especially if they win tonight. They're set up pretty well. So it's like, well, you want him he's already a little banged up heading into this week. So Dearness Johnson could just be like, oh, I can throw him in there in a deeper league, desperation. Hopefully he gives me 10 points or something.
And we've seen him do it in the past, unlike some of these guys. Like we've seen him come in behind Nick Chubb and have monster games late in the year. So,
yep.
Yeah, and he can do it all. He's like a fully rounded, well played running back. Like he can catch, he can block, he can run the ball as hard as anybody. I mean, that's why we were so hard on him when it was surprising that Bigsby was getting more touches than him to start the season. It wasn't quite sure why, but it looks like they finally realized how talented he is, or maybe just wasn't healthy to start the year.
Yeah.
But all right, we'll move out of running back into wide receiver. And
lots of guys.
It's a long list. There's so many people that you could look at, and the one I'm leaning toward first is actually Jonathan Mingo, 12.1% rostered. In the past 2 weeks, he's hit double-digit fantasy points. He is running a majority of the snaps, and it is finally paying off. Thielen has become kind of an afterthought. I don't know if it's just due to what they're running or if it correlates with the firing or how that works. But week 12 versus the Titans, 10 fantasy points, gone 4 for 60, 4 or 6 for 60. Then week 13 versus the Bucks, 12.9 fantasy points, going 6 of 10 for 69 yards. Nice. But just that's what you're kind of looking for. It's a really soft way to get in there. It's giving you 10, 12 fantasy points and more. So, and then plus side of that, he gets the Saints, Falcons, Packers, and Jags in the next 4 weeks. So all good matchups for him. Should work out great. And then I really went for a shot in the dark. Somebody who is so widely available with Christian Watson potentially being out for a little bit with the hamstring injury. We saw some key moments from Wicks and saw a lot of targets for him in his limited snaps. He only played 25 snaps last night. And in that, he was able to put up 7.3 fantasy points with going 3 for 4 for 43 yards. And took a break the previous week, but week 11 versus the Chargers, 12.1 fantasy points, 3 of 5 for 91 yards. So he is that big play guy that kind of Watson shows up and can be, as well as a guy who can score. So, and they seem to kind of like him. At least Jordan Love does. He was definitely looking for him and had some really impressive catches. On top of that, he gets to play the Giants, Bucks, and Panthers the next 3 weeks. So another good option there. Very curious, but definitely watching with the Christian Watson injury.
Yeah. I really like the Jonathan Mingo one because, like, if you're the Panthers, it's like we got to see if this guy's legit or not, right? Like, let's throw him the ball, feed him the ball. Adam Thielen's not your future,
Yeah, I also feel like you've mentioned a couple times this season, Mike, how we've been pretty spoiled over the last couple of years with rookie wide receivers coming in and from the jump having monster years. Like there's a reason guys like Puka are outliers and get all the hype that they're getting because they're in a rookie season having monster numbers, having veteran type numbers. Most of these guys need to learn the playbook, learn the NFL system, and get a connection with their QB. So this is about the time of year that you'll see rookies start to pick it up and get more involved in the offenses. So this may be like buying in on the floor for Mingo going forward.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, on that same point, I mean, we're dealing with it with Quentin Johnson. He finally had a decent week, which I don't know what that's really attributed to, but he keeps dropping serious passes.
Yeah.
And I think that's just part of it is like if you can show that you're going to catch the ball and do something with it, it kind of earns more trust from your quarterback, and I think that really pays dividends as well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown's a perfect example. A couple years ago, didn't do anything until week 12, 13. So, and it's not like he wasn't good. Like he was good. Yeah, just that Chargers game just popped into my head. Like, I tried to block it out. Like,
sorry, man.
It's such a bad game. But Romeo Dobbs is another one. Basically for similar reasons to what you said. He's an interesting one because it's like I don't know if I've ever remembered so he's wide receiver 36 on the year. So he is, if you play in 3 wide receiver leagues, again, he's played in every game, so it's not great when you're wide receiver 36 and you haven't missed a game. You're not like moving the needle, but I don't know if I've ever seen like a guy that just like more not really liked, like dropped down. He was up above 50. Now he's below, he's at 36% right now. Just like, if you look at his numbers and Rashee Rice, they both play the same amount of games, and they have the same amount of points essentially. Like, but one is loved, and I understand like Chiefs offense, all of that stuff. He's a rookie coming on, but Dobbs has actually done okay this year. Like, he hasn't been that bad. 11.5. I think he's averaging. Might not be factoring in yesterday's game, and then obviously Christian Watson going down. Is going to open up more targets for all these guys. So I just think it's an interesting one. Like he's, a top 36 receiver. He's up there. So,
well, it's just like Rice. I mean, the thing that, again, it's fool me once kind of a thing. People keep getting bitten by him because Watson comes back and he disappears, or Reed has a good game and he disappears. Like what's really been saving him has been touchdowns. But if Watson's going to be stealing those moving forward, like, it's so difficult because you don't know, and Love doesn't care. He just wants to win, and it's showing. I mean, it's the exact opposite of what the Chiefs kind of do for different reasons. I mean, he has a bunch of weapons that he can use, and he uses them all, while the Chiefs have one weapon and they can't even get the ball to him. Like, well, I guess 2. Pacheco was really just tearing it up yesterday before his ejection, but
yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, then I look at it since the bye, it's like, okay, 6 games or 7, including yesterday. What did he have yesterday? Like 4 for 80. So of those 7 games, only 2 of them have not been double-digit point games. And, if he's my wide receiver 3 or my flex in a wide receiver 3 league, it's like, all right, if he's giving me 12 PPR points and then 16 on another week, like, I don't know. I'm okay with it. I know it doesn't move the needle and get everyone excited, but potential bump coming for all the Packers guys with Watson out. And this offense is looking a lot better. Jordan Love in general. So speaking of a good offense, Noah Brown should be back on rosters with I had Tank Dell and Ramondre on my my most the league I want to win the most. And yeah, it hurts, but Tank Dell obviously done for the year, and Noah Brown, we've seen him do it in the past. This offense it can't all go to Nico, right? I know it did yesterday, but it can't all go to Nico. So Noah Brown could see a bump for sure.
Mean, I prefer it because that was my prediction, is that it would all go to Nico, but in the preseason. So I'm really hoping that it is the case, but it's not. They continue to use all their wide receivers. And we just saw even Brevin Jordan, who when Schultz went out, was the guy who kind of stepped up into that role and had some success. It was kind of scary. It made me very nervous.
Yeah. I think it was week 2 on this show where I was like, like Nico Collins said, I don't know if I ever expected like a 7 for 146 game from Nico Collins. And like since then, he's done that like 2 more times. Yesterday, 9 for 190. Like, geez, man, this guy's on pace for 1,400 yards or something. It's crazy. So he might be a league winner with Tank Dell going out for sure. So yeah, another guy. These guys are all in like the under 40%. Elijah Moore, if Amari Cooper, we mentioned him last week, but Cooper played, but then left with an injury. So keep an eye on that. But 12 targets last week in week 13, only caught 4 of them. But obviously, he's going to be Flacco's guy if Cooper's out.
Brought him up as a streamer on Sunday because I was like, just throwing it out there because of the fact that they both played on Jets. So and it clearly was one of his favorite targets. And I thought Njoku was going to be the benefactor, but it was Bryant this past week. And I just think that was due to Njoku just missing a couple of big plays. I would still think Njoku is going to be another solid target for you guys moving forward too, though.
Yep, for sure. Demario Douglas, been mentioning him for a while. He's keeps falling. He dropped probably because of his injury.
And
should be back next week. Yeah, in a bye. But yeah, 6 or more targets in 5 straight weeks, and he's just going to be a solid play in PPR leagues. If you need that, that last spot to kind of just give you some consistent scoring. And then for deeper leagues, I've been mentioning him a lot as well. Khalil Shakir. Now, if Dawson Knox comes back, it could be interesting how they run this offense because they were running a lot of 2 tight end sets when Knox was there. So if they go back to that, then Shakir's going to be droppable. But if they don't, and Shakir's out there 70, 80% of the time, there's not a many, this is a good offense to be out there 70, 80% of the time, could score a touchdown, averaging 11.3 points per game since the Knox injury week 8. So he's definitely been, I think he had one huge week and a couple okay weeks. So he's definitely been start worthy for a couple weeks there. So lots of receivers.
Yeah, plenty of options if you've lost 1 or 2 and you need some help. Definitely some streaming options there for sure. I mean, if you're like me and have Terry McLaurin, you might be looking at one of these guys because that guy gave me a big old goose egg, and I'm still salty about it this week. Him and Dell, I had them both playing. I've got 2 zeros, and I think it's 90 points tonight from Ridley and Trevor Lawrence to try and get me back into it. So if I get like 3 touchdowns, we might be okay, but it's gonna be rough.
Yeah.
So, all right, we'll get out of wide receiver into tight ends. No surprise, go homer here and go Gerald Everett, 25.6% rostered. I don't know what's going on with the Chargers, but outside of Keenan Allen, nobody else is catching balls. And it seems like Everett is one of the few players that has that success rate. I mean, he's been one of the ones who have been catching the short targets. Eckler has pretty much stopped seeing targets. It's impossible. I don't understand what they're doing. You're kind of hoping that Palmer comes back, and maybe that even helps more with Everett, potential bigger plays. But he did miss a couple weeks with injury, which may also have bought into why he's so low now. But Week 12 versus the Ravens, 14.3 fantasy points. Caught all 4 of his targets, 43 yards, and added a touchdown on it. And then versus the Patriots, 4 of 5 for 44 yards, 8.4 fantasy points. It was an ugly game, but he continues to see 4 to 5 targets and getting 40 yards. You're already a pretty highly ranked tight end at that point. If you get a touchdown, you're definitely top 12. So it's pretty impressive for him to keep moving forward, but
yeah, like that for sure. Yeah, they need someone. I don't even know what this offense is, but
trash.
Yeah, apparently
they can't figure it out, man. I don't know.
I don't know. Isaiah Likely was either not picked up or they're on a bye. It was a tough bye. 6 teams on bye, so he's widely available out there. And last time we saw him, he led the Ravens in yards. Now it's not saying much because it was like 40 yards, but they just kind of had a bad passing game for sure. And, I think he had around a 19% target share. So still think there's some potential for him to be a pretty good tight end. And they get the Rams in week 14. They give up the 4th most points to tight end. So pretty good matchup, I think, for Likely coming off a bye. This team, they could put up a lot of points here. Chigakonkwo, 62 yards in week 13, over 100 yards the last 2 weeks. I liked him coming into the year, just hasn't, this whole Titans offense has just been pretty bad in terms of the passing game. And but Okonkwo seeing usage, 11 targets the last 2 weeks, and then gets the Dolphins next week and then the Texans twice during the fantasy playoffs, and they give up the 3rd most points to tight end. So you could be seeing Okonkwo coming on and just giving you, safe, solid production at the tight end position. And then you mentioned it, Brevin Jordan's not a bad shout. I mean, with Tank Dell going out, if Dalton Schultz is going to miss more time, which hamstring injury, he could miss more time for sure. So yeah, those are 4 tight ends for you guys that you can potentially grab this week.
All right. Nobody cares about that one. Nobody cares about defense, but we're still going to talk about it. We'll roll in. The one I like the most is the Colts. They're 26.1% rostered. Part of another reason I want to see how tonight goes. I'm expecting not a lot from Browning. He got really lucky last week with a couple of tipped balls that just happened to land in Chase's hands. And on top of that, Colts defense has really been stepping up. They also get the Bengals, Steelers, Falcons, and Raiders the next 4 weeks. Really great matchups. But week 12 versus the Buccaneers, they put up 12 fantasy points. Week 13 versus the Titans, they put up 17 fantasy points. They're getting hot at the right time. They kind of know what they are, and they've really just rolled with it. And I'm expecting to see more of it. I mean, the matchups are too good. I expect them to really not struggle against any of those options moving forward, especially with the fact that Minshew is really just dominating with kind of time of possession. He's really just more or less keeping it away from people, and their defense is stepping up and really helping them. So,
yeah.
I actually like the one you have. So I want you to tell people about this because it's something I noticed this week too. So go ahead and roll.
Yeah, with the Texans, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Texans not very under 15%. Jets in week 14. We know how good the Jets are for fantasy defenses. And then they're a good playoff schedule. They get Titans, Browns, Titans. So that's a pretty good schedule there. And I'm just going to double check now if that, especially if that Browns game is in Cleveland in December, you just tend to get low scoring games. It is in Cleveland. No, it's home. Never mind. But it's still like that. I don't think Cleveland's going to be this offensive powerhouse with Flacco, or if it's DTR, whoever. I think at Texans, I was just looking at it today. I was like, yeah, I really like that next 4 weeks for them for sure.
And on top of that, I mean, the fact that their offense is producing is also, again, helping their defense so much because you have to score. So you're pushing what you normally wouldn't to try and keep up or score, and it's just falling into their hands pretty well. And the Texans clearly love their quarterback and are playing extremely hard for him. So,
yeah, it's the Dolphins effect, right? Like you could be trailing a lot, although it didn't happen this last week for whatever reason. But usually you think the team's going to have to throw a lot. That leads to sacks, interceptions, stuff like that. So the Packers as well. We just saw them put up a pretty good performance against the Chiefs, which who knows how good offensively the Chiefs are. But anyways, the Packers under 25%. We get the Giants in week 14. That's a great matchup. And then they get the Bucks and Panthers the first 2 weeks of the playoffs. Those are two really good teams for fantasy defenses and your fantasy playoffs. So really, really important. Start looking at defenses for the playoffs because, again, you're playing you're playing good teams theoretically, right? So the difference maker could be the defense. And real quick with the Packers, that week 15 game against the Bucks is at Lambeau, so could be a bad weather game like last night, and just could get a low scoring game.
Well, and the other thing is that at some point, Jair Alexander has to return, right? I mean, he hasn't played like the past 2 weeks, and they continue to play very well without him. But having that additional cornerback to like really stock up on any of your dominant wide receivers could be a big boost to that defense as well.
Yeah. I just saw Steve's note in the Discord about the Patriots least amount of points since week 9, 46. So if you're buying into that, they play the Steelers. Either way, if it's both, it could be bad weather games, no matter where they are, Pittsburgh or New England. So that might not be a bad one.
The Patriots offense being atrocious doesn't matter if you're just playing their defense.
Yeah. And it's a Thursday night game, tend to be low scoring, just kind of all of that kind of packaged together. They're not a bad start either, unless you think Trubisky's better than Pickett. So there's always that.
Yeah, no. However, I think that does boost Johnson quite a bit. So if he's been dropped, might be something that you're looking at this week because it could easily happen. And if that's the case, I would expect him to get a lot of usage because Trubisky really loves him.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
that's the funny thing about the Patriots here. First team to score 0 points and cover the spread.
Jeez. That's terrible. I think they're the first. I think they're the first team in NFL history, or since like before World War I or something, like where they've haven't given up more than 10 points. It plays into the 46 points allowed. But yeah, it's been like less than 10 3 straight weeks, or 10 or less.
Yeah,
and they've lost all 3. Like, oh my gosh! I think every other team this year is like 52-0 or something, giving up 10 or less points. So, man,
it's rough. And I mean, I think we got really lucky because we got to see Zappy, but man, I don't know. Chargers were there. There was a good play because Zappy was the quarterback, but don't know how it would have looked with Jones. Or if we would have been in the same situation.
Yeah.
But man, it was terrifying.
Indeed.
All right. Well, we'll wrap up. We'll get out of your hair. Go enjoy this, I guess, interesting game. I mean, there could be some potential. Hope you guys get your matchups all rounded out. Best of luck. And we'll get out of here. But thank you so much. If you haven't already, join the Discord. Still a bunch of us hanging out. Have 2 movie reviews I'm posting today. So not that anybody cares, but I'm excited for it. I always like doing that in our Discord for people who do watch movies. But that in mind, hope you all have a good week 14. Good luck. See you back here Thursday, or if you're around tomorrow in the Guillotine League, I got making the cut. And as always, I guess, remember, keep up the nonsense.